That intro definitely showed off the classiness of that lens, didn't it? I really hope it did. But if it didn't, doesn't matter. At least I just created something. But yes, today is a new lens day. I recently just bought the 150 to 600mm Sigma contemporary lens. And I've been looking into this lens for quite some time. The reason being is I started doing a lot of wildlife photography, and 105mm just wasn't close enough. Yeah, sure, I could have made it work, but I wanted to play a wee bit more and get in depth with the opportunities that this lens had to offer. So after much debate and deliberation, do I choose the sport version or do I choose the contemporary version? I settled on the slightly cheaper contemporary version, and I must admit I'm quite pleased with this lens, even if it is a massive, heavy brute of a beast of a lens. So I wanted to get out there and get this lens tested almost immediately, and I decided to take up a place where I'd seen a lot of wildlife before, which was in Strangford Lough. I'd recently been there on a trip and thought, happy days, the birds will be out, and whenever I arrived, yeah, the pathway across was flooded because the tide was in, so there was no getting to it. So I had a bright idea to go to the other side of the loch, and of course if the tide's in on one side, the tide's also in on the other side, and there was no waterfowl picking through the silt and debris. But I wanted to test this lens regardless, and here's the first image I actually did ever take on this lens. It was whenever the moon was full, bright, up in the sky, punched that in to 600mm, cropped in slightly, and I mean, this image speaks for itself. This is hands down my best photograph of the moon I've ever taken. And that's just handheld, snap, 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 and already, especially around the outer edges, you can see the detail that's being captured inside that photograph of the moon. And also, whenever I was at this park, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to waste this opportunity, I'm going to try this lens out. The light was starting to fade, I had to push up the ISO a wee bit, so in some of these photos you're going to see the sort of drawbacks of being in low light, but the R5 as a camera is more than capable of being able to punch up that ISO and capturing some of those fantastic shots, even if there is some grain creeping in there, but then again, it might give it that sort of film feel or look to the photo. So yeah, this first photo here, just a greyback up in the tree, quite a distance away, punched in 600mm handheld, and this is the shot I got. You can see some interesting details here, especially in the next one of his leg holding onto the branch, you know, perched at the top of the tree. It's pretty cool. Another shot I tested out was the seagulls in flight. Obviously, being handheld, having the heavy lens, I panicked a little. I thought, you know what, I could try and take a better photograph. And it's like anything that's new or you're trying out for the first time, you gotta get used to it, you gotta practice, and soon you'll be able to get a feel for the lens and understand the mechanics. The second shot clearly applies to that, because obviously some birds are in flight and I was able to focus. The autofocus, especially animal detection, eye detection on the R5 is second to none. It really does hone in on those animals whenever you're trying to shoot them. But again, some of the drawbacks of being out and about was the light was fading, the wildlife I wanted to photograph was not there, so I decided to take myself to a nearby forest park. Inside the forest park, I actually got some of the opportunities that I'd actually never thought I'd got. I was so fixated on photographing wildlife that halfway along the path trail, the light was fading, I stopped, and I got some rare opportunities. And yes, this moorhen photo is slightly blurry, green is absolutely everywhere in the photograph, but again, that's punching into a bird that's maybe 200 or 300 meters away from yourself. And as I was standing there photographing and trying to work and adapt, I captured this photograph here of this little water rat. Obviously somebody had left seed, they were probably feeding the ducks during the day, and this wee rat was hungry. And I've actually never gotten a photograph like this before, where this made me stop and think. And instead of being uptight and frustrated on trying to work out and figure this lens and trying to find wildlife to take photographs of, being stationary for a period of time led me to this shot. And yeah, there's a branch in front of the rat, and it's a rat, but I mean, this is a kind of cool shot to show the capabilities that might not be big animals, but definitely the small animals you can capture. And as we waited, the robins presented themselves for their photographic glory. And some of these shots are just truly an absolute delight and treat. And this one here is probably one of my favourites. Yeah, there's some branches in it, but it gives the photo a wee bit of depth, I think. Yeah, I could edit those out, but at the same time, that eye is tack sharp. The focus on the R5 again coming in clutch there, and it's just a fantastic photo. You can definitely see some of the finer details in its wings. And I mean, if I was to punch in on this photo, yeah, it might be blurry and grainy, but you'd be seeing the sort of finer, softer details of the plumage feathers on the robin's chest there, and it's a lovely, lovely photo. And finally, just to finish it off, I'd seen some ducks crossing the river and snapped a few photographs of them too. Now, this lens did set me back a little bit, but it didn't set me back as much as some of the other content that I've bought, or gear that I've bought, or lenses that I've bought. And I mean, if wildlife photography is something that you're wanting to get into, I mean, start off with the lens that you have, and if it is a telephoto lens of up to 105, you can make that work. And as soon as you make this work, and I've been telling my girlfriend who comes out on photography journeys with me, recently got her a lens for her camera that goes up to 200mm. You know, she's been struggling, trying to panic to get the settings and do everything. But I said to her as well, slow it down, take your time, and you can make great photos with your content and your lens and your camera. You don't need to be going out and buying the fancy gear like I've done here, but I mean, sometimes learn the trade and learn the practice on the smaller stuff and then work your way up. It's better to create one photo that might be slightly bad or slightly farther away or not as perfect as you want than to spend a lot of money and figure out that you're actually not that into it. Anyway guys, thanks very much for watching. Hopefully be producing a lot more content with this lens and a lot more photographs with this lens. As always, check me out on Mr. Quinn Photography over on Instagram and use the hashtag MrQPHOTOS if you're posting some of your content on Instagram too. And with that being said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.